remember a ridiculous number of cartoons from my childhood. There were the short comedic ones by Looney Tunes and also Silly Symphonies, some of which were Warner Brothers, featuring characters like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, and then the Silly Symphonies, but were Disney, that had Mickey Mouse, Daffy Duck, Goofy, etc. But what I remember most from my childhood were the animated action series, what I guess in American terms would be called the Saturday morning cartoons, or indeed the after-school cartoons. From the early 80s to, let's face it, the very early 90s, these were the things that I made a point of watching. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, the Transformers, GoBots, Thundercats, Mask, Centurions, Defenders of the Earth, Visionaries, and probably the one that rounded things off for me before I moved on to other types of entertainment, Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, as they were known in the UK, because there was something wrong with the word ninja in children's entertainment.
I mean, I was that perfect age for Star Wars, so coming inside late 70s, early 80s, it was absolutely ripe, and they were trying to get as many things on TV as possible. And the one thing that really stood out, that whole science fiction, kind of big bombastic ships and fights and gunfire, was Battle of the Planets. Now, at the time, I didn't know what anime was. This was just a cartoon, and it was cool, and the characters were cool. And, 7's Arc 7 wasn't that annoying, but it just kind of encapsulated everything that I was looking for at that time. Now, later on, I would find out that it was actually an adaptation or a recut for Western audiences of Science Ninja Team Gatchaman by Tsuyo Yoshida. And yeah, they may have taken out a lot more of the adult themes and a lot of the profanity, to kind of fit that Western audience. But it just kind of blew my socks off, because at that time I hadn't seen anything quite like that, and it was the nearest thing I got to Star Wars, because for as much as I loved Star Trek and things like that, it wasn't Star Wars, and this had the action, it had the excitement, and it was just absolutely brilliant. No, I love that. Battle of the Planets, yeah, easily one of my earliest memories, and the first cartoon I really fell in love with.
The real Ghostbusters. I will force Joe sometime to sit through the first 2 seasons of this, so we can do an episode on the enduring legacy that JMS's world building on 80s cartoons like this and She-Ra had. Animaniacs is another one that sticks with everyone who remembers it at the time, and I think that had the internet been a thing then, there would be a greater lasting legacy of memes around it.
So the cartoons I remember most from my childhood, the earliest ones, these really show my age, there was one with this girl who had a beret on and a magic pen called Penny Crayon, I remember vaguely. It's another show with similar animation style called The Family Nest. Growing up, as I got older, Simpsons really dominated my childhood. Lovely aunt and uncle would record the latest episodes of Sky, and that was really exciting for me and my sister. Because of how good The Simpsons was, especially in this golden era, a lot of shows that were maybe better suited were more directly aimed at kids, suffered by comparison. Having said that, I did have really fond memories of some CBBC and CITV shows. Hey Arnold, I remember a lot. Angry Beavers, underrated show, I feel. Also, I remember SMTV Live, when Pokemon was first shown on there. That was really exciting. An exciting thing to see this weird, exotic show with all these cute, fighting Japanese critters or whatever.
I remember when I was quite small, one of my earliest loves was Mighty Mouse. Apparently this was a cartoon show that was predominantly sung, and while I don't remember the sort of individual scenes, I do recollect that I did a lot of time, spent plenty of time when I was maybe 3 or 4, running around with a sort of, cape going, "Here I come to save the day." So perhaps Mighty Mouse was the character I identified with the most, certainly at that age. And later on, I certainly identified a lot with He-Man from He-Man the Masters of the Universe, but that might have just been because he had a cool sword. And the same would go for somebody like Lion-O and Thundercats. If I think about a cartoon character that I might identify with these days, then that's a lot more tricky. However, I will certainly say cartoon characters that I am very glad to know about as an adult would be Joy and Sadness from Inside Out, Pixar's Inside Out. Those are two cartoon characters I'm very happy to have in my life.
I mean, I don't know if I identify with a character or anything like that. I mean, if I had to stick my neck out and say one of them, it would probably be Kazuma Kawabara, from Yu Yu Hakusho. Probably because he's kind of that character. He's a bit of a lunk. He's kind of seen as a bit of a villain. He's a bit gregarious. He gets into a lot of fights with the main protagonist. But he kind of comes around on you. He's got a very dry sense of humour. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He'll have your back in a fight, and kid comes good at the end. Spoiler. But you really see that kind of progression that you don't really see from the others in that show. But yeah, no, Kuwabara from Yu Yu Hakusho is probably one I identify with most because I am that kind of character. People kind of wrote me off at a very young age, and hey, look at me now.
Entrapta from the She-Ra reboot. Anyone just needs to look at my hair to see this.
Cartoon character I identify with in my head is clearly Batman from the animated series. Cool, clever, solves crimes in my spare time. But if I'm really honest with myself, it's probably Milhouse from The Simpsons, i.e. the dictionary definition of uncool, and someone who is excited by things that bore other people. I think it's fair to say. I've actually used the phrase everything's coming up Milhouse in real life in a sincere way, so there you go.
If I could only watch one animated movie for the rest of my life, I think it would be Inside Out. That's a film that quite literally helped me look at myself in new ways, helped me engage with the world in a way that made more sense. It was quite a profound experience, which is not something one expects to say of a Pixar film, but I do think Inside Out is a work of genius. And every time I see it, I find more. I find more to laugh at, I find the same points make me cry, and I find so much more in the visual imagination.
Ooh, Desert Island cartoon, just one. Yeah, okay. I mean, okay. I'm sitting here pretending like it's going to be a difficult question, but actually, you know what? After a couple of seconds, I know what the answer is straight away, and that would be Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira. That was the game changer for me, and probably the one film I've seen more than any other. For as much as I love my Japanese and South Korean cinema, and I had a love of Hong Kong cinema growing up, I have seen Akira more times than anything because it was one of those defining moments. And I actually remember the first time I watched it. It was a late night showing on Channel 4. I would have been about 16 at the time, and it just absolutely blew my socks off. And just as because you kind of got used to anything like that, a film or anything, especially watching sort of like a lot of the straight-to-video fare that was coming out in the 80s, you kind of getting used to how far can this take it? And, it's that exploitation idea that the poster looks cool and the ideas are there, but it's never going to deliver it. But Akira did. And it kept on building on that delivery to the point where it got to the end, and I was physically and mentally exhausted from it. But it was like no other experience that I'd had with cinema up until that point, and that was a real turning point, as I say, because it also proves as well that animation wasn't just for kids. For as much as people were saying, oh, it's a cartoon, and especially as well because you had companies like Manga Entertainment who were releasing a lot of these films, and you went into your HMVs, your Virgin Megastores, and they were still being aimed at kids, and yet you couldn't sit down with kids and watch as I say, like your Akiras, your Crying Freemans, your Wicked Cities, Monster Cities, your Doomed Megalopolises. It was just such an exciting time as well, because it was kind of like finally going, this is awesome, give this a go, this will change your mind on what animation can do and what animation could be, and we need to stop dismissing it as just for kids, like what's happening, or what has been happening throughout the history of comic books. It's for children. No, really not. I mean, some are, yes, absolutely, but it shouldn't be the exclusive domain of children.
No question, Transformers the movie. Great cast, some nice set pieces and backdrops, and the animation, while clearly rushed in spots, is very effective and can be quite visceral for a kid's toy franchise. And that soundtrack, though. I ended up backing the Kickstarter for the Cybertronic Sprees cover album of that the other year so fast.
If I could only watch one animated movie for the rest of my life. Okay, End of Evangelion, which is in my top 10 movies of all time. Apart from things like Star Wars, Casablanca and stuff like that, I generally don't rewatch movies. Yeah, End of Evangelion is an exception. It is a weird recommendation because you can only really watch it if you've seen the TV anime series or the movie doesn't make sense. But despite that, it's in my top 10. I just love that movie so much. If you've not seen Neon Genesis Evangelion and you want to get into it, a good alternative to the TV series and the head trip that is the movie End of Evangelion is they did a remake of Evangelion called Rebuild of Evangelion, which there's like 4 movies that come out, and that's a great alternative and recommended if you've not sampled the delights of that series.